Hi, this is Elliot Eisenberg of Graphs and Laughs here to catch you up to date on the latest in residential sales data. In Hillsborough County, single-fam home prices went up 2.2%, multifam went up 3.4%, the best multifamily performance across all three counties. Sales activity slipped 3% for single-fam and 4.9% for multi. Sales price as a function of list price improved to 97.8% on the single-fam side and declined a tiny 0.1% to 96.7% on the multifam side. Pending sales activity slipped 2.5% for single-fam, and while it slipped 8.3% for multifam, that was the best multifam performance across all three counties. Lastly, inventory continues to rise in Hillsborough as it does everywhere else, up 48.1% for single fam and 90.1% for multifam. That said, inventories remain well below their historic averages for both single and multifamily. In Pasco County, single-fam home prices increased 3.2%, and they increased 2.6% on the multifam side. Sales activity slipped a slight 0.1%, whereas multifam sales activity increased an incredibly strong 18.8%, by far the best multifam performance across all three counties. Sales price as a function of list price improved to 97.3% for single fam and slipped slightly to 96.7% for multifam. Pending sales are down a slight 1% for single fam and a heftier 13.6% for multifam. As for inventory, it continues to increase here as it does everywhere else, up almost 79% for single fam and almost 114% for multifam. That said, inventories remain below their pre-COVID amounts in terms of months of inventory. In Pinellas County, single-fam home price went up a very strong 7.8%, the best performance across all three counties in both types of properties. In the multifam side, they went up a little bit less than 2%. In terms of sales activity on the single-fam side, it went up a very strong 22.3%. Again, the best performance across all three counties in both types of properties. Multifam sales activity slipped a little bit less than 9%. As for sales price as a function of list price, it fell to 95.6%, and multifam, the percentage also declined here to 93.8%. Pending sales activity increased 4%, the best performance across all three counties and both types of properties. Multifam pending sales activity declined almost 15%. Lastly, as for inventory, it grew 96.1%, but still represents just 3.3 months of inventory. Not much. By contrast, on the multifam side, inventories increased 94.7% and now represent 6 months of inventory. If it goes up much more than that, I would expect to begin to see declines in multifamily home prices. Turning our attention to the national economy, GDP slowed considerably in Q1 to 1.6%. In the prior quarter, 23 Q4, it was over 3%. Because of that, we see unemployment going up and inflation continues to weaken. Looking at the labor market, unemployment's risen from 3.4%, its trough, to now 3.9% and going higher. It isn't all that high, but I'm beginning to pay attention. I don't want to see it get much higher. That would not be a great signal. As for inflation, it continues to decline, but much more slowly in 24 than it did in the last 3 or 4 months of 23. And the primary reasons for this slowdown in the decline in the inflation rate is primarily insurance, all kinds of insurance. Homeowners insurance, car insurance, and health insurance have all gotten more expensive. They've gone up quite a bit. Now, many of these insurance issues reset in the new year in January. So this is likely a seasonal effect, but nonetheless, we're not exactly sure, and clearly it's real. On top of that, we have the kooky way rents are measured in government indices. The long and the short of this is the Fed's a little nervous. Yes, inflation's falling, but not fast enough to give them certainty that it will continue to fall to their goal of 2%. So if you remember 3 or 4, 5 months ago by now in early January, the expectation was the Fed was going to cut 6 times, maybe 7 times of a quarter point each. Really big reductions. That was great. Then we moved on. Inflation didn't fall fast enough and markets began to hope for 2, maybe 3 rate cuts. Now markets are hoping for 1, maybe 2 rate cuts. Some people are suggesting there'll even be rate increases. That's not going to happen. Inflation will continue to fall. The question is how fast, but there's no evidence at all of it going up in any shape, way, or form. Yes, even with the insurance premiums going up, that's not a big enough percentage of the overall inflation basket to drive the overall number up. Now, when do we begin to get these elusive rate cuts? I hate to tell you, but it's not all that soon. We're likely to get, if we get 2, we'll get 1 probably somewhere in September and 1 in December. If we only get 1, we'll get it in between those 2 meetings and probably in the November meeting of 1 cut. That means next year we get probably 4 or 5 cuts. If we get 2 cuts this year, we'll get 3 or 4 cuts next year. More cuts will come, more will come in 25 and 24, but we still have to wait a while because the Fed's got to be convinced that inflation is really going to get to its 2% goal before they start cutting. Last but not least, my fear remains the possible light recession because the Fed keeps rates too high for too long. That said, the U.S. consumer remains remarkably resilient, keeping any inflation fears at this point at bay.